Okay. Of are you seeing changes in the mainstream with regard to accepting nutrition as a viable alternative to the mainstream modality, or are they locked into blocking out nutrition and just selling drugs and medical procedures?
Mm. Um, it's slightly better. When I started this in 2012, I didn't know anybody else in the country that was doing nutrition for pre-ESRD patients. And you couldn't even get keto analogs back then. So here's positives. You couldn't get them in America. You could get them in Europe. The only way I knew about them when I was getting my master's degree is I started researching. I was like, why are there so many people going on dialysis in America? Why is this? And so I started looking at what they were doing in Europe, and they were doing things very different, but we couldn't get keto analogs here. Now we can. There are physicians, plant-based physicians, Dr. Balani in Florida, Dr. Shubham Joshi, they're both in Florida, Dr. Hashmi, probably I'm leaving some people out, but there's a few across the nation that do believe in nutrition and working with dietitians, or they do it themselves. And so you do see that. And then the biggest positive forward is 2020 KDOKI change. And then the 2024 KDIGO, that was a big deal because they actually mentioned plant-based foods in that. So it is getting better, but it's slow, slow, slow.
So, you said that in 2012, you were really one of the first people that you know that was doing this type of protocol. What led you to do this protocol, given that it wasn't something out in the field in general? And what studies did you look at that basically guided you to make these conclusions?
Mhm. So that's what I was saying. I was working on my final master's paper at that time. And so there was a whole lot of studies that went into that paper. So it would take me a long time to tell you all the studies, but most of them were coming out of Europe. And so over there was a company called Fresenius Kabi that was putting out these keto analogs, and they were using them over there, and they were getting results. And then I also looked at historical data, like what did we do before there was dialysis? Well, it was diet. And so it was interesting. I was speaking on that. I was living in Las Vegas at the time because my husband was finishing up the Air Force out there, and I was speaking, and this man heard me, and he said, "I want you to work with my dad." And I said, "Okay." And I told him, I said, "Listen, you're the first person I've done this with. Let's just see what happens." And so this was an elderly man. And his GFR was 15. His doctors were ready to start dialysis right then. And he said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to work with this girl over here," which was me. And so it was like, all right, let's do it. And so we did. And so we dropped him to the very low protein diet because he was so far gone. And I just supplemented with amino acids because that was the best I had. But we kept this man off dialysis for 16 months. Now you may think, well, that's not that long. Yes, it is because I believe he was 84. Okay. That is so hard on the elderly to go onto the dialysis machine. That is one big deal. The other big deal was that I didn't even have the tools I have now back then, and we still kept him off for 16 months. So if someone's that far gone, they will probably eventually fail. Their kidneys will eventually fail. But now I believe I could have kept him off longer. Um, but but it worked. And so then what I did was I said, you know what? This is so exciting. And so I said, I just want people, I just want to help. Like I didn't charge anybody. I just would see patients free to get, and I said, listen, I don't want to charge you. What I want is your data. Give me your data. And so they all would just send me their labs. And so that's why I wrote the first book, because I was like, this works and nobody's doing it. And we're just letting these people fail. Um, and go to dialysis in America, not in Europe, but in America, that's what we were doing. And so, yeah, so that's how I ended up doing what I do.
Great, great. And so, can a plant-based diet reverse kidney damage, or is it primarily more about slowing progression and symptom management?
Well, I mean, I guess you could call it reversing to a degree because I mean, I have people. Gosh, I wish I remembered her exact numbers, but just a week ago, I had a lady that I was helping, and I mean, her GFR, I want to say it jumped 10 points within like 6 weeks. The good way, the way we want it to go. So people are going from like a GFR of, a three back up to a four, a 3B to a four or something. The one of the ladies the case studies I covered in my first book was a lady who her GFR was in the 30s. And she was one of the ones I said, just give me your data, just give me your data. And so she did everything I told her. And we were meeting for her appointment. And she said, let me run to my doctor. I'm going to pick up my labs and then I'll meet you. I said, okay, perfect. So she goes to her doctor and she picks up her labs. And when she got there, she opened them and she looked at them and she said, my gosh, Jennifer, you have saved my life. Her GFR went from in the 30s up to 76. And that was no med changes, no med changes, just diet alone. And that's what I always say. Whenever I highlight a case, I'll say no medications were changed here, just diet alone. Do you need certain medications if you have kidney disease? Yes, please don't stop taking your medicines because there's some you're going to need. Your kidneys are failing, but you need diet changes. And the med changes weren't causing that rise in GFR because they hadn't changed and they weren't doing anything before. It was the diet. So patients get better.
And you made such a drastic change with that one patient. How do doctors respond when the patients go to you and they recover in such a clear and measurable way, and then they find out that and the doctors find out that that was done through diet? Do they believe it? Do they care? Do they just say, "Oh, that's great," and then just move on, or do some of these doctors actually say, "Please teach me more"?
Um, Most of them just go, "Oh, that's great," and move on. Wouldn't you think they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, let's send everybody to this girl"? Nope, they don't. But I mean, there are some, like I said, there's some doctors in America that absolutely, yes, they do. They know, they understand. I mean, the least they could do is just say, "Hey, read this book." That's the least they could do, or go listen to The Real Truth About Health to this girl. She'll tell you everything you need to do. But no, they don't. So I don't I don't think that's just kidney disease. I think that's common in all other conditions,
Yes.
I don't understand, but that's just the way it is.
And with regard to daily fluid intakes, what do you recommend? Like, what kind of levels for someone trying to
Mhm.
maintain kidney health, and how does hydration affect kidney function?
Hydration is huge. Drink a lot of water. If you're a pre-dialysis patient, drink a lot of water. Unless you have some other condition that you need to withhold fluids, like congestive heart failure or something like that. And if your doctor's put you on a fluid restriction, then don't go by what I'm telling you right now. But if not, then drink a lot of water. If you're a dialysis patient, here's something to think about. If you're on dialysis and your kidneys have failed and you don't urinate anymore, you get 4 measuring cups of water a day. 4 cups. That's all. Ask them how dry their mouth is. Ask them how that feels. You don't
Oh,
want to go there. So drink water. Now, here's something. This is, if I'm working with someone one on one, I can tell a little bit better. But here's just sometimes the simplest things solve a problem. But look at your urine. If it's straw colored, you're good. If it's straw colored and not bubbly, you're good. You're getting enough water. If it's super yellow, you need to drink more water. If it's bubbly, you're probably spilling protein.
okay. All right. So bubbly equals protein. And
Mhm.
what about, I mean, I know I hear this with dialysis with regard to odor of the urine.
Hmm.
Is there anything like with that with regard to the kidney, or is it just bubbly equals protein and real dark yellow is bad?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily about odor. I mean, different things can cause different things that you eat can cause different odors, but I would say mostly look at the color and make sure you're not seeing a lot of bubbles.
Okay. And is there anything, if you had to boil it down to, one, two, or three things that you would say that everyone should be doing for kidney health, what would those be?
Hmm. Um, Eating plant-based and keeping your blood pressure down. Um, so, you know, I've wanted to do this study for a really long time. they say as you age, your GFR naturally declines. I wish that we could look at people who have been completely plant-based their whole entire life and see if that's the case. But plant-based nutrition it lessens the load on everyone's kidneys. It lessens that acid. Everything I talked about today happens in everyone. Um, Blood pressure will destroy your kidneys. So watch the salt, watch the stress, things like that. If your blood pressure is high, be relentless in getting that under control. If you feel like you've done everything right, here's another nugget. I just think of little nuggets that I share, but there's something called hibiscus tea that will
Mhm.
help lower blood pressure. It's really interesting. I did a mission trip in Guatemala last summer because the children there go into renal failure, and on every child's tray, I went to Guatemala City to work with the dietitian just to learn. On every child's tray, they had hibiscus tea, which I thought was pretty interesting. But anyway, that'll help lower blood pressure. And then if you're diabetic, get your blood sugar under control because those are the two main causes of kidney failure. Um, and with that, I think just as generally, that would be something that everyone could do. But especially those that are at risk. And here's another thing, if you're a diabetic or you have high blood pressure and you think, well, I don't have kidney disease, do you know? Go get your urine checked because that's something else that happens is doctors don't check urine. Make sure you're not spilling protein, especially if you're a diabetic. Because kidney disease is a silent disease. I can't tell you. I mean, on a weekly basis, when I was in the dialysis centers, somebody showing up there because they had no idea that their blood pressure was high or they had kidney damage. They showed up in the ER. They couldn't breathe. They were fluid overloaded. They were throwing up everywhere. And they were told, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, your kidneys have failed. And right this very minute, we're going to put a shunt in your neck and you have to go to dialysis right now. And that is a terrible way to start dialysis. The shunt in the neck is super inflammatory, back to inflammation. It can, like, you have a 50% greater chance of death in the first 90 days of dialysis by having that thing in your neck. So make sure you're getting your urine checked if you have those two conditions and then get those conditions under control.
So you just mentioned hibiscus tea and the benefits of hibiscus tea. Is that because of its antioxidant content?
I'm not 100% sure what it is, but there's research behind it. I was pretty fat when I saw that, I was like, my goodness, why so much hibiscus tea in Guatemala? And I came back and there's actually valid research that it does lower blood pressure and improve kidney function. And I'm not sure they know the mechanism of action why.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Indian gooseberry or Amla, and
Hmm.
thoughts on that for kidney function and reducing blood pressure.
When I think of AMLA, I think of cardiovascular disease, which is still valid for kidney disease because kidney patients are heart patients. But the mechanism of act so the reason I know about it is because I have the genetic predisposition for cardiovascular disease, so I've researched everything in the world that will lower cholesterol, because I've had my genes run and everything. But if you look at the research on amla, there is valid research that it works, and it has almost the same mechanism of action as a statin, but it doesn't cause all those side effects. So the same thing with orange bergamot will do that same thing. So those are two great supplements. If you're on a plant-based diet and you're having trouble getting your cholesterol down, those two are really good. Also, berberine is great for blood glucose control and for cardiovascular disease because the research is solid there too. That it almost acts like a PCSK9 inhibitor and increases the number of LDL receptors on the liver so that you can pull more LDL out of the blood and get rid of it. And so berberine does that. So so omega-3, bergamot, amla, and berberine are the four like cardiovascular supplements that I love. And there's good research behind those. In fact, I dropped my blood glucose down. I mean, I was already on a plant-based diet and I dropped my blood glucose down. My blood cholesterol down using those so much that my doctor was like, he has this British accent. He was like, Mrs. Moore, how did you do this? He couldn't believe that I had gotten it down. So, anyway, they work. And there's research.
Awesome, great, thank you. So I'm gonna throw it out to the audience to ask a few questions. So Kristen B, if you can state where you're from and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Christian from Stockholm in Sweden.
Hey.
And Hi, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I wonder about polycystic kidney disease, and I wonder if
Mhm,
it's the same dietary
mhm,
recommendations for PKD stage 3 to 5, and what are your thoughts on vegan ketogenic intervention? Thank you
mhm.
so much.
Yeah. So you're up on the research. So yeah, there's that research is in its infancy, but it is there and they're getting results. So the big thing is that those cysts love sugar, and that is why they are well, it's more of like a vegan ketogenic low oxalate diet, but yes, there is some good research on that. So a lot of times when it comes to nutrition and kidney disease, you kind of have to balance things out. Like, am I willing to give up this for this? What's there's good, better, best. So would I put a regular person, kidney patient on a ketogenic diet? I would not. Um, if I had a polycystic kidney disease patient that was not getting results, would I do that? I would, because even though the research is in its infancy, they are getting some good results there. So I would definitely say, it's worth giving a shot. There's a program out there called Renew that you could try, that's run by another dietitian, another renal dietitian, and a physician out of California, I believe. And you could definitely try that.
Great. Thank you for that. And next person we have is Yvonne. Yvonne, stay where you're from and ask your question.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Ivan Ardila Ansures, Islamic health coach from Mexico. And I want to point out that you said that there is no possibility to cure, regenerate the kidneys. And in fact, there is a nutraceutical capable to do it. It is milk thistle, Silymarin. For example, in UNAMI University in Mexico, it could cure the Parkinson disease with mega doses because it can regenerate the substancia nigra in the brain. And in one university in Mexico, it was discovered that the use of mega doses of silymarin can also regenerate the beta pancreatic cells that produces the pancreatic hormone insulin, proinsulin, peptide C and insulin. So I suggest you that you use Silymarin in kidneys that need regeneration. And also another point that I want to share with you is that you give the people the advice to use water, but you don't mention that the water must be pure without radioactive
Mhm,
isotopes or so on. And the only way to get it is through distillation. But when the water is distilled, it lacks the minerals. So you must replenish the minerals and electrolytes from water in order to give a good water to your patient. That's all. Thank you very much, and
mhm.
thank you for your presentation.
Great. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks, Yvonne.
you.
Any comments on that or
I haven't seen any research on that, so I'd have to check that out, but I haven't heard of you know, people coming off dialysis. I think we have to, maybe I'll look, but I haven't heard that. And then yeah, you do have to have purified water. There are ways to purify water for, reverse osmosis systems, or there's another water filter I love called the Berkey water filter. So but not everybody can afford those things as well. And if you cannot, remember good, better, best, just drink water. So
great, thank you. And our next question is coming from DA, and we just have 3 minutes left. So just to give you an idea of our time frame. DA, state where you're from and ask your question.
Yes, I'm from Maryland. I'll be quick. I heard beets are good for lowering blood pressure. At least one family member told me that and was successful in eating beets. The other is I heard that if you do a liver detox properly, that'll also help your kidneys. But my question has to do with stem cell therapy. I don't know if you got that in your presentation because unfortunately I missed it. Do you think there's any promise or hope that stem cell therapy might also regenerate kidneys? Thank you.
Possibly. I mean, I haven't, nobody's doing that is to my knowledge, but you know, there's a lot of things that are going on right now in the kidney space. Thank goodness there's a lot of new medicines coming out. There's actually a implantable artificial kidney coming. I believe that's out of Vanderbilt that they're trying to get approved. So, you know, there is a lot of research. The one thing I'll say is that, you know, until that research comes to fruition and it's available, there's not, you know, there's not a lot that we can do with it. But what we can do right now is, like I said, change your diet. And there's very simple things you can do to where the GFR will go up in the right way. And then hopefully, you know, as time goes on, we can learn how to regenerate kidneys. We could, if the kidneys have failed and we can't regenerate, we could implant a device where people don't have to go into dialysis centers. And unfortunately, I think with the big business of dialysis, that those things are unfortunately hard to bring to market because there's a big business there. But hopefully one day we'll see those things come about. In the meantime, stay out of those centers.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so we have about a minute or so left. What final thoughts would you like to, I guess there's two audiences. There is people who want to stay out of those centers, and there are people who have poor kidney health and are looking to balance. What would be the message for those two audiences?
If you don't have kidney damage yet, but you're at risk, I think that's what you asked, then like I said, you know, get tested on the regular and get those comorbidities under control. Get your diabetes, get your blood pressure, all that under control. And then if you do have kidney damage, you know, be your best advocate. Know yourself. Some of these people have done some research that have asked, you know, called in with questions. They know things that are going on out in the world. Be careful. Some of those things are not valid. So just be careful. There's a lot of people that want to give you, I mean, you see it in kidney disease, you see it in the cancer world. There's things that may harm you. But know what's out there, know your lab, and be your own best advocate. Fight for yourself, fight for your kidney health and your personal health. And then the last thing is that, you know, there is hope. You can slow or send your GFR the positive way, reverse that kidney damage if you go ahead and get started now and put your best foot forward to eat a healthy diet and get those things under control.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that amazing presentation. So that concludes our time. So if you can unmute the audience so they can show their appreciation for Jennifer.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Much appreciation.
So much.
Wonderful talk.
And love your Southern accent.